Welcome to Premier Scene Podcast, where we grant you your press pass to movie reviews and exciting interviews. Coming up in episode 2, The Aftermath, The Hole in the Ground, FrightFest, Lords of Chaos, the Interfilm Awards, and The White Crow. So today joining us, we have the usual gang. We have Ryan, Keith, Anthony and myself. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Ryan, as you now know. Ryan Holloway, and I'm a film fan and reviewer.
Keith?
Yeah, I'm Keith Eyles. I am an independent filmmaker and a lifelong movie enthusiast.
Anthony?
Same here. Independent filmmaker, at least I will be when I make something, and loved films since the year dot. So yeah.
Didn't know you were that old. Year dot.
You'll be surprised.
Wow.
And I'm Claire Bueno. I am presenter, film journalist, and host of Premier Scene generally. So, what have we got coming up today? We've been really busy actually in the last couple of weeks since we've seen each other last. 2 or 3 weeks. We've got The Aftermath, that's what we're covering today. Horror, The Hole in the Ground, we've got some interviews from there as well. Keith, you were at FrightFest, so we're going to hear a little bit more about Glasgow FrightFest. And the Interfilm Awards we were lucky enough to cover, which is a great incentive for kids to get them, as it says, into film. The White Crow, we've got a lovely interview coming up with Ralph Fiennes, and we'll discuss a little bit more about the life of Rudolf Nureyev. So we've got a fun-packed evening in store for us. So I think, should we kick it off with The Aftermath, because that's currently in cinemas at the moment, starring Keira Knightley, Alexander Skarsgård and Jason Clarke. And it's directed by James Kent, who did A Testament of Youth. So
which is a great film.
Which is a great film. Yeah. Oh no, it's
on the list.
See, I've seen that, but not Aftermath.
Well, I've seen it, so there we go.
So
we're even.
We're just on balance. Balance has been resumed.
It sounds like it's got a horribly ugly cast.
Well, it's a hard watch. With
watch.
Keira Knightley, Alexander Skarsgård, and Jason Clarke. I have to say, but in fairness, all of them are really, really good in this. I have to say, probably, would you agree that Jason Clarke is a standout performance?
Yeah. It usually is.
It's sort of like, it's like in roles that could have been very easily just sort of, misused or just not particularly put much into. He always sort of like put something in there and delivers. So no, he was great. I think they all turned out a good performance.
Yeah, no, they did. And just to give you a quick sort of synopsis of the story, it's set in post-war World War II Hamburg, and we see Keira Knightley. She's going over to meet Jason Clarke, her husband, who's he's like a major, and he's been placed in Hamburg. And we see very much the devastation of what's happened to Hamburg with the bombings, which, as we learn, and it's factually accurate, is that Hamburg was bombed much, much worse than London was during the Blitz. And so we do see a kind of stark realisation of what happens there. And kind of Keira Knightley and Jason Clarke move into Alexander Skarsgård's house, and it's this huge, massive house, and Keira Knightley almost kind of gets swamped in it, really. And Alexander, being German, and we as Brits have been coerced into thinking that the Germans are bad, so there's this kind of instant kind of angst between these two people. But what we find is that the devastation that's happened to both sides of the family helps create this kind of romantic bond between two people that you wouldn't imagine. But we've got an interview with James Kent. Do we want to bring that up? And he can explain far better than I can, really, about the kind of ethos behind the film and what inspired him, and then we can probably chat a little bit more about what he's got to say. The thing I found, when I watched the film, was that it's a film that resonates with you. It lingers, and you find yourself going back to it. Is that something that you found when you first read the script?
Well, yes, of course, I can only judge as a director whether something lingers and how I respond to it. If it lingers with me, well, that's the best clue I've got that it's going to linger with an audience. And I think that I like the fact, some people say, oh, why didn't I won't give the game away, but why wasn't it a different ending? And I go, well, the different ending would have made it so simple. This ending makes you think about it.
Really true, actually. And the thing as well, if I can compare it to Testament of Youth, is the commonality is that how war affects individuals,
yes.
and literally the aftermath. Again, was that a theme that continues to interest you post-war?
It does, actually. I mean, it's probably not a coincidence that I've made 2 films, both about, in a way, what follows after war, and I'm just amazed by how people deal with their grief and get over it and move on. And I want this film to be an inspiration for anybody who's lost anybody to feel that they can rebuild themselves. Actually, time is a great healer.
And I think what's really refreshing about this film as well is that we see the story from both sides, the effect that war and the impact that it's had on both nations, actually. Was that important for you to convey that lack of bias?
You know what, that's for me the most important message of the film, because Germans are not very often shown to have been victims of the war, just like we were. But of course they were. Hamburg was bombed just like London. In fact, it was much worse than London. The bombs that fell on Hamburg in 3 days was the same as the total dropped on London over the entire war.
And that's what was interesting for me, learning that from the film. So for authenticity, I imagine the factual accuracy was paramount. Really.
Yeah, we were very, very careful about that. We had military consultants, we had medical consultants. I mean, we had more consultants than you'd think for a film that's mostly set in a house. But it's, you know, it's just important to get those facts right. It really is.
Touching upon that house, actually, if I may, there's I think when we see Keira Knightley's part, when she comes in, she's kind of lost, and this house actually amplifies that feeling of being lost.
I'm glad you understood that, because it's very much is that sense that she's alienated from the world. She's an ordinary middle-class housewife, and she's in this enormous house with servants, and it's like, I really didn't need this. I really didn't need these paintings. Can't we just be somewhere just the 2 of us?
So it's interesting hearing him, because what did you think, Anthony, when you kind of first saw the film?
I liked it. It is refreshing seeing something that's set in post-war Germany. Because it's just not something we always think about. We always think about how England was affected, how the people who were invaded were affected, but you don't really think about what Germany was going through post-war. And that's one part of the film that I found quite. I know there's the whole love story and everything going on. Yeah. Which obviously is quite an important part of the film because it's quite a big part of it. But for me, it was just refreshing to see. Just taking it from that angle is what kind of sets the film aside from other kind of like, you know, films of similar kind of ilk, where, you know, there's, you know, the husband and there's like the younger good-looking fella coming, like the lady's chatty lover kind of like scenario. But I find that whole thing fascinating. There's a thing about, like, was it 8-8? Heil Hitler, H88 they put on there. Yes. It's like a Heil Hitler thing. Yeah. And it's like H is that eighth letter
is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So that's how they establish who is still a follower of Hitler. But it's interesting though, and just putting the question out to all of us, when you're making films about war, is the historical accuracy important? I mean, I want to be educated when I see films like this, but is there a balance about how much we get educated and a balance about how much we leave to artistic interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, there always is a balance in that sort of thing, but I think ultimately, you know, you can tell stories about individual characters within, you know, a historical piece like that, and the characters can obviously have their individual journeys, but I think it's important that the history around it be accurate, unless it's a genre, you know, unless it's particularly like a speculative fiction film or a what if film or something. But I think otherwise, if it is dealing with a part of history, it's pretty important to, like you said, so people learn from it, and obviously we want sort of future generations to. We don't want to sort of rewrite history, which film can do if you're not careful as well.
It also gives it its gravitas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can. It's easy to look at something like Titanic and it's a love story, and all the teenagers swooned, as I recall watching that. Every time Leo was on the screen. But as far as I'm aware, they were pretty accurate in in
Yeah.
the
In the
events.
framing of it.
Yeah, a
And
lot
it's,
of it,
it's very different when they're telling a story about an individual. Like Braveheart was obviously like famously got a few facts. Altered,
Yeah.
should we say?
Well, like
yeah,
they
a
had
few
kilts,
things.
for example.
Yeah, exactly. Which was like, and I think
really?
was it also something to do with the blue
Really?
paint he had? And they didn't have blue paint or something like that. But so I think when it's a broader story, I think it's important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it sounds like a really good.
Yeah,
It's
I've
like a
not
really
seen
good
this.
film, but yeah,
I'm
no,
quite
it's
fancy
fantastic.
seeing
It
it.
really, I mean, do you want to pull up as well what, dare I say, the delightful Alexander Skarsgård had to say? That was
See him again.
I know it was torturous.
I mean, good interview,
Thank
by the
you.
way, with the director.
Thank you very
And,
much.
Yeah, really good.
I think, I really like the way he phrased it, but I think what's important is, when you're talking about general individuals in that aren't, military commanders or politicians or something like that, but the ordinary folk, obviously there are good and bad people
Yes.
on both sides.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And often fiction can paint one way or the other.
Exactly, and I think the lack of unbiasedness in this film makes it really quite a refreshing watch, to be
Yeah, it
honest.
was like I remember the mighty Barry Norman, who I will always mention every now and again. I'll always
And
come
why
back
not?
to Barry, and why not?
Yes.
And he was talking about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and he said the Germans, the Nazis specifically, he said with like the perfect. He said they were exactly like the Redskins were before social awareness hit westerns. That they were always like the unscrupulous, the savages and stuff. And then when we just became a little bit more aware of it. So when the Germans came, they saved cinema. That's all I'm saying. They gave someone to hate, but it is. I mean, that is. But oddly now we're in that sort of like phase because now it's like, well, actually, it's not. The Germans weren't an evil race trying to take up. They were just a group of them, and we're all everyone's guilty of it. Certainly, the English.
Well, as
the
Indiana
we've done.
Jones said in that, Nazis, I hate these guys. So,
Those are the good old days. Anyway,
Well, I haven't got the lighting right on Skarsgård because I know he can look a bit awkward.
just,
Let's have a look.
I hate my job.
it's more funny. Just sort of like Claire's down here and he's up here. And he's getting the camera angle is a bit awkward. To be quite
A
honest.
stiff neck by the time I'd finished it. I think he's about 6'4".
Is he?
Yeah,
he's quite
he's really tall.
Very jet lagged. If I remember.
Very jet lagged.
I
Yes.
hate him already.
What was refreshing from your character, what I thought was we see two sides of the story, that there are casualties of war from both nations. Was that something that attracted you in the script?
That was precisely what attracted me. I thought it was quite refreshing to read something that was more nuanced and than some of the stories that come out of this era. A lot of them are depicted in a very black and white way, where good guys versus bad guys, and I don't subscribe to that narrative, that notion really. I think it's way more interesting and way more real if you can see the suffering on both sides and that they were all victims.
Loss.
Yeah, tremendous loss on both sides.
Oh no, so the thing it was
Phrased it
nice.
well,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah. So
I need to see this.
yes,
Yeah,
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually took my mum and my friend to go and see it, and like in every scenario, once you watch it again, second time round, there's so much more that you see that you missed the
You can
the
kind of
first
relax
time.
into it a bit more.
Yeah.
It's like as much as when you're reviewing films, you want to go and enjoy the film, and that's the whole point of it. But you're also there to do a job, so you've got to kind of analyse. Some half the time, analyse these films far beyond what any of the general public's actually going to go and do. So it is just nice to go switch off and actually sit back and
definitely.
watch something, which is the testament of a lot
No,
of
I
films that
agree.
you can do that. Doesn't always work.
And when is that one out?
It's out at the moment, so
Oh, it's out now.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So
we can go
yeah,
and see it.
definitely go and see
cinemas now.
We
it.
don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to go together.
And
We should do.
it was who's it distributed by?
We
Oh,
get
it's
the popcorn.
Fox Searchlight
That's right.
distributed
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
that's
So
good.
that's
That's
yeah, no, it's really very good.
And it's got Keira Knightley as well.
and it's got
That's
Keira Knightley.
See?
Did you want to see Keira Knightley?
Of course I
Oh
want to
yeah,
see
but let's
Keira
have a bit
Knightley.
of Keira
I would
Knightley.
like
That's
to
why
see
you've come round.
Alexander.
It's interesting though with Keira Knightley because I feel kind of like she's largely disappeared over the last
Well,
few
didn't
years.
she have
Yeah, she's had a baby. So I think she did step out of the
The limelight.
And she did that film at the end of last year called Colette, which was
I haven't seen that.
that was
Okay,
good. I
yes,
saw
you're
that
right.
with a Q&A, and they thought it would be kind of an awards
Oh,
worthy
right,
film,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it seemed to
Okay.
be one of those ones that slipped under the radar. But I mean, it was actually a very good film.
Did it-
Amazing.
And sort of
It's
pushed
similar
some
to
boundaries for its time, you know, for when it was set.
What was that about again? Because I'm sure it's similar to something else I've
It
seen.
is, yeah. It's it was about. I know where you're thinking. You're thinking The Wife, probably.
Yes.
Because
yes.
essentially it's about a without going into too much detail,
Yeah.
because it wasn't on the program for
That's
today.
all right.
But yeah, it's about a woman who authors some work that is now very famous work, but at the time was contemporary work in that period. But a man takes credit for it. The husband, in
right,
fact,
okay.
takes
So it's
credit
very
for
much
it.
like The
So
Wife,
hence
yeah.
why it's got some sort of similar parallels to The Wife.
That's
okay.
it. And what's the Tim Burton one? Big Eyes?
Yes, that was about art, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Yes,
that was
but
really
that
good,
was
that
where.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, that's
it was
actually
one of those
really
ones
good.
that I watched,
Yeah.
It's just
Is that
it's a bit
Amy
like-
McAdams? I
yeah,
think it is.
Amy
Amy Adams.
Amy
Christoph
Adams.
Waltz.
Sorry, Amy Adams and Christoph
Christoph
Waltz.
Waltz.
Yeah, and
But it's like I put it like Big Fish because it's not a typical. Even though I love Big Fish,
I love
it's
Big
a-
Fish.
It's not a
Yes.
typical Tim Burton film in some respects because it's much. Well, actually, Big Fish is actually quite fanciful, but there's a balance between kind of like that. Whereas
it's not one of his auteur movies.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
okay.
See, I'd still like to see Big Eyes. I've not seen it because I think Tim Burton reached peak Tim Burton quite a long time ago. So I'm all for seeing something a little bit different from it.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't. It didn't do that well. I don't think financially when it did its run in the cinemas, and that's what people seem to focus on. And when you watch the film, it's just like you understand. Well, it's not a typical Tim Burton film. So you can see some people might be put off, but you watch it. But it's a perfectly good film. There's nothing. It's like that was the directing. Oh, the acting was shocking, and it isn't. It's just really engrossing, and that same type of struggle between women in success, but men essentially take the credit, and whether or not, and that's essentially Big Eyes. It's whether he did it out of, which I don't think Christoph Waltz does because he's a partner. I'm trying to remember the film. This was a few years ago, but she does the artwork and he takes credit for it.
Right, okay.
And he said, well, because you're not going to get taken serious, so I'll say that it's me, but then then it's obviously he has. It's important for her to continue to be successful because his artwork was never anything special, whereas hers is.
Right,
And so
okay.
it was, I really liked it a lot, and it's slightly different as well for Christoph Waltz as well. It's just even though he's still kind of a villain, but it's a little bit more kind of nuanced. Not that he doesn't give nuanced performances.
Oh,
I haven't
we're
seen
finishing
it,
each other's sentences.
Anyway, I'm loving the tangent.
I know. It's
What I was going to say was that it's good to have Keira Knightley
We've got to
back.
keep
Yeah.
on our toes on this
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
We might suddenly have to reference films that we've done no research on.
Yes, I have
That's
not
all
seen
part
any
of
of
it.
those films.
That's all part of the
See,
fun.
I'm rambling. So anyway,
But yeah, good to have
Somebody
Keira
who
Knightley
doesn't
back.
ramble, Miss
Keira
Knightley.
Knightley.
When we see your character, I felt that she was lost, and she comes into this big house, which seems to amplify that. Is that something that you got when you read the script?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's not just lost. I think she's grieving in a very extreme way, and has lost utterly who she is and her entire life. I mean, so yeah, and I think the house in this film is very much a character in this film. It's about the English occupation of Hamburg after the World War II, and they did repossess German people's houses with all of their belongings in them and live in them. So it's a very strange thing to kind of go into somebody's home and take all of their possessions, I should imagine. So yes, I think that's a very big part of the film. Yeah.
Oh,
Is it?
bless.
Yeah, she
Keira,
was so
she's back.
lovely. Yeah, she was lovely. And there's a beautiful moment in the film that kind of brings everybody together, and it centres around a piano and her playing Claire de Lune. And it's actually it's very moving, as obviously music is always emotive, isn't it? But it's a really strong and powerful scene where everybody kind of comes together. I thoroughly recommend it. I
Good.
handed over my hard-earned cash to pay for it. So moving swiftly on, we're going to go to The Hole in the Ground, which Ryan and Keith, you've seen that.
Yes.
A horror film. Tell us more.
Yeah, so The Hole in the Ground, it's from Vertigo releasing. It's an Irish horror film. It's from first-time director Lee Cronin. I think he's done a lot of short films in the past, but this is his first feature. And the film basically centres around a girl, Sarah, who, along with her son, I think they sort of allude to a bad breakup of the relationship, and she takes her son to this lovely house in Ireland. And what ensues after that is one night where the boy goes missing out into the forest, which is conveniently out the back of the house. And whilst looking for him, she finds the hole in the ground from the title. And she can't find her child, and when she finally finds him, Chris, I think it is, they get him back to the house, and from then on he starts to exhibit very unusual behaviour, and then we delve into then, is it her son, or is she being paranoid? And so the horror sort of ensues from that tale. And it's really, I'm going to steal someone else's phrase here, and I wish I could remember who it is, but it's a horror film that on a lot of ways doesn't really feel like it does anything new, but it kind of feels like it's sort of shining new light through old windows, and it's very creepy. It's a very emotional film. There's a mental health kind of side story that's in there, and it is very horrific. And I think for a first-time director, it's a real standout actually. And I think that it's one that horror fans will like, but I don't think you necessarily have to be a horror fan. I think you can probably get a lot out of it, actually.
No, I agree. I mean, I thought it was it's proper creepy. It's got some proper. I mean, one of the things the director does very well is he deals with the suspense and the horror aspects very well. You know, he's clearly very skilled in the craft of doing that. So it's very slickly put together. And it's sort of entropathic in some respects. It's one of those films that, and there's no spoilers on this podcast, but it's one of those films that is not spoiling it to say it has a somewhat ambiguous ending, but it's not one of those ambiguous endings just for the sake of it. It's one of those endings where you can take so many different outcomes away from it, and you think about it afterwards. And we had a chat, and like we both sort of had slightly different thoughts, and we had a discussion about it, and you sort of think, you know, it's one of those things where you think it could have been one way, and then you have another think about it on a slightly different angle or take, and you think, oh, it's that way. So it's very clever. It's got very layered, and it's not one of those films which you can just watch and then walk away from and you know the beginning, middle and end. It's one of those films where you walk away from it and you're still thinking about it afterwards.
And that's the key, isn't it? Because that's what you want from any film, really, is that you've had some kind of reaction to it.
Yeah. And it definitely, what you were saying about the whole playing on the mental health and paranoia, it definitely deals with that, but then it can deal with there's some other really weird stuff which we can't get into.
Yeah,
because it will spoil it.
Weirdness.
But yeah, I think, and it's just nice that this is essentially a fairly low budget Irish horror film. And
well, that was the thing, wasn't it? It is low budget, but what's quite nice watching it is that it's low budget, but he somehow managed to eke every penny to somehow make it almost look like a studio horror film.
Yeah,
it looks
fantastic.
Amazing.
It does look good.
And Seána Kerslake, who plays Sarah, is wonderful. I don't think I've seen her in anything before. But a real find was James Quinn Markey, who plays the son, Chris, who is probably the creepiest child
Really?
in the best possible way. The kid can act. I mean, he's such a find, I think. And there's definitely a moment, and I'm not just saying this, I think you probably agree with this, but I'm not just saying it to coin a phrase, but there was definitely a couple of moments where I had the hairs on my neck were standing up. But literally, because there was a couple of real key moments, which we won't spoil here, but it's definitely one to watch, and it's out now. I think it's View Cinemas. It's mostly in, so you can still catch it.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly limited release, unfortunately. But
well, Ryan, you had the pleasure of interviewing Seána, didn't you?
Seána and Lee.
Lee. So can we?
I was very lucky.
Anthony's going to flex his.
Awesome.
Actually, my fingers cracked.
They
that was
were
nice.
lovely.
Little sound
they
effects.
were so nice.
You came away, didn't you, feeling really kind of full of enthusiasm after speaking with them as well?
They were both absolutely lovely, and you can tell that you just get a feel for someone that he's going to have a future. This guy, he knows what he's doing, and I hope to see Seána in some more stuff because I thought she was wonderful.
I just wonder whether as well that whether horror is a great genre for filmmakers to sort of cut their teeth. You know, we speak to a lot of horror filmmakers, don't we? Kind of with our respective careers and what we do, and it does seem to be even kind of big names. I mean, I'm thinking John Krasinski. I mean, A Quiet Place. That's it. Yeah, A Quiet Place. I mean, you wouldn't think somebody of his ilk would be starting his directorial debut by making a horror film.
And now a franchise.
And that, yeah.
Well, I think with horror films as well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a big horror fan, but I kind of feel like horror fans on the whole can be quite open and quite forgiving. And I think they can be... I think it is a good way, actually, for a new director, because I think horror is... The fan base is there.
Yeah,
You've got an instant fan base. If your first film's a horror, you're instantly going to get it seen by a lot of people because the horror fans are very passionate.
Yeah, they are.
In the best
and
possible
inclusive
way.
as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's also, I mean, it is the horror genre is also a very good genre for experimentation as well.
Yes, that's true, actually.
You know, you can do experimental films in horror. I mean, obviously, you know, we've had found footage.
Yes,
we've had the mockumentaries, and nowadays we've got this what they're calling screen life, which is
tell me more.
It's essentially imagine the desktop on your laptop there. The cinema screen represents the screen of your laptop, your desktop. Okay. So all of the action happens in terms of social media and the camera and the internet, and it's blending all those technologies. And there's been a couple of horror films produced by Jason Blum called Unfriended, and there's a sequel. But there was also a great thriller last year called Searching, which starred John Cho, and it was about basically he plays a Asian American father in living in Los Angeles, and his daughter goes missing. And the only thing that he has is her laptop. So the film is essentially from him trying to get into her, the desktop and using social media and her files and her chat rooms and all of this sort of thing to try and unravel this mystery and find out. And it works.
Amazing.
I mean, you think how's this going to work? All being okay, they make one or two slight cheats, but essentially they stick to those rules, and it
I bet she was
works.
well angry when she found out.
That would be a spoiler.
Yeah.
But yeah,
what have you done, Dad?
Exactly. But you can experiment.
Yes.
And it's like you say, you can really play around, and you can. If it isn't always at the quality that you want it to be, for whatever reason that might be within horror, whether it may be the acting or maybe the sets or anything like that, but as long as you pull off what you want to do, people do resonate with it, and that is it. You are allowed to fail to a certain degree, and then you can and like all of us, you do stuff and then you move on, and the next time you kind of get over those kind of things. But you can do that with horror because you just can't do with anything, and maybe a bit with sci-fi. Although sci-fi always tends to be at least thought of as more expensive because you've probably got to go in a spaceship or something like that. But horror, there is that. I mean, the amount Peter Jackson's and all that, they've all started doing horrors, and that's where you do get that kind of fan base because people do jump in and get on with that. And James Gunn and all that kind of. I think they always horrors was originally the way where they got their careers. So I do. I find horror. I always thought, like, even when I was back at film school, it was like to do a horror, and it isn't like a conniving way. Well, we're going to do horror, then we're going to get it. It's not about. It's just like you can go there and you can fail or you can succeed, and you're not judged any other way. You're allowed to do that. You can't do it with dramas and.
It does tap into people's senses, don't they?
And you've got throughout the history. Respected filmmakers have still made horrors. You know, Stanley Kubrick made a horror. You know, and in more modern times, you've got the likes of Jordan Peele, which is really, he's really taken the horror thriller genre, but using it to deal with, you know, much more than that, and saying things about, you know, what's going on in society and, you know, social issues. So it can be used as that sort of platform as well. And it's, so it is very layered. And I always think of horror as a sort of mixed genre as well, because you know, we've got comedy horrors, we've got sci-fi horrors, we've got psychological horror. There's so many different types.
Monster movies.
Yeah,
you're right.
Slashes and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Should we see this interview?
I
know it's my fault. I totally sent us off on a different tangent.
Welcome to the Tangent Podcast.
That's us.
Congratulations on the film as well.
Thank
of
you.
course.
Thank you.
Lee, I mean, did you set out originally to be a cause of insomnia when you made the film? I haven't slept much since watching it, so thanks for that.
Excellent. I'm really pleased to hear that. I guess the answer would be slightly yes, because one of the things I like about horror movies is their ability to actually stick with you afterwards, sometimes more so than other genres. And I like the idea that, you know, someone might turn out the lights and the first thing they think about when they try to go to sleep is what they've experienced in the movie that you've made. So it's not like, I wouldn't put it out there as like, this is my goal, but it's certainly part of the motivation a little bit, yeah. I've always liked that idea of playing those magic tricks on people.
And was it always a deliberate attempt to make horror your first feature, or was it kind of right script at the right time?
A little bit of both. I think it was likely going to be a horror because I've done a number of horror shorts and I've got quite a few horror ideas on my slate. It's always going to be kind of a mystery. Sounding really Irish now. A mystery or a thriller, or something in that slightly leaning darker space. I like the tools of kind of dread and tension. So yeah, it wasn't a surprise to me, or I think any of my colleagues, that it was a horror movie. And
obviously the forest acts as this beautiful backdrop to the film but there must have been some difficulties filming in a forest.
Yeah.
For both of you, imagine.
Yeah, I think for me it was about finding the right spots, and sometimes things seem really obvious that you want to be able to do, but you just can't. Like, as you mentioned this previously, we were talking about like just clearing pathways. You might love the way certain trees look, but you're like, we can't actually get a safe route for showing it through here at, say, the speed we want, or rather, you know. So there's lots
of footage of me just stacking it.
Yeah. So that's I think the real challenge is really for you, because you're the one that has to perform within that environment.
But I suppose for light, like, that's the.
Yeah, it did bring a certain amount of challenges.
Should that leave it there?
Yeah.
It's 8 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like 8 or
It's
9.
10 minutes.
Good interview.
Oh, 10 minutes. Yeah, it's a lovely interview.
Yeah,
they seem lovely.
They were they were the two of those sort of people that you walk in, as soon as you walk into that environment, they're just instantly welcoming. So that put me at ease.
Yeah, instantly disarming, really. But it's one of those films as well, I would imagine. And when it's interesting when you interview these people and you see how passionate they are about it as well. It makes you want to champion it even more, doesn't it?
The
really?
two of them had a nice rapport together as well, and that was sort of a nice thing to see. So they obviously bonded quite well.
Yeah,
over the film.
Over being frightened to death. And talking of being frightened, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I hope this opens more doors for them.
Yes.
And,
I agree.
And other opportunities, because it really is a nicely put together film.
No, it's inspiring
really
for other young filmmakers out there. Out in cinemas, Vertigo releasing, and pretty much in the View.
Yeah, View Cinemas seems to be the cinema of choice. It was quite a limited release, but yeah, View Cinemas.
Fantastic. And we are staying on the theme of horror. So Keith was lucky enough to go to Glasgow FrightFest last week or the week before now.
Yeah,
time seems to
fly. Flown by.
So, literally, you flew up, did you?
I did.
You did.
Yes. Yeah, this year I could. The previous year the weather wouldn't allow it.
Oh, okay.
This year the weather was fine, and it was great. So it was no problem.
What class? What class?
Come on.
So we're first class.
Private jet. But private jet.
Yeah,
so
of course.
Premier jet.
But yeah.
I just halo jumped. I halo jumped out. I got I'm like, Ben Nevis. Now's the time to jump. I did my full-on Tom Cruise. Right.
So tell us about FrightFest Glasgow. Was it all that it lived up to be?
It was actually this year. I've been doing FrightFest now for some years, but Glasgow for the last 3. And out of the 3 years I've done Glasgow, this was definitely the best. It had a really good atmosphere this year there. Obviously, it's not as crowded as London, and you only have the one screen, so they were able to do a lot of Q&As.
That's nice. I like that.
Which obviously.
Yeah, you love it. Yeah, and I do actually as well.
We all do. Us film fans, so that was really good. And also, there's usually, I mean, it's fair to say at FrightFest, back on the sort of horror thing like we were just talking about, quite a variety of quality. All right. However, they were all of a decent standard this year.
Really good.
I mean, there were no absolutely terrible films at Glasgow, but we're going to have we've done some special interview episodes. So I'm not going to linger too much on it now. We're gonna dig in. Myself and William McLaughlin, who's one of our friends, who lives in Glasgow.
Premier Scene chappie.
Part of Premier Scene, and I met with him up there, and we went and saw it. So he and I do a spoiler-free overview of all of the films.
You do. It's quite granular, isn't it? Yeah.
And then we've also got a couple of special interviews where we were able to get some guests. Some of the filmmakers agreed to actually talk to us about the films. It's quite good because we've got a bit of a variety, because one of them, Freaks, which is Zach Leposky and Adam B. Stein, that is they're both based in the US, and that was a fairly slick. It's not a high budget studio film as such, but it had, it stars Bruce Dern and Emile Hirsch and Grace Park. It's got some
weight behind
names in it, and some visual effects that work quite well. So we've got them on. Again, it's spoiler free, but they do talk about the production. They also talk about sort of their passion for movies and how they got started in the business and things of that nature. So they've got quite an interesting story, and they were very enthusiastic. So we've got them on, and then at the other end of the spectrum, I saw a very small budget independent comedy horror film made by some very young filmmakers, and it was called Here Comes Hell. Okay, and it's sort of like a 1940s. It's shot in black and white. It's in the Academy ratio, and it's sort of like an Agatha Christie-esque type film about people in a group of people in a haunted house, but then it's got your sort of early Peter Jackson type gore effects and things going on. So it's really and we've got the producer, who's Olivia Loveridge, and the director Jack McHenry. I hope I've remembered everybody's name correctly, but yes, we've got them.
Jack McHenry.
Yeah, we've got them on for an episode as well, and talking about obviously very different circumstances around the making of their film, but again, it works. It's there's a lot of passion. And it really is kind of a labour of love type film, and works really nicely. But they're both very different films, so we've got a little bit of a variety there that we can talk about. And of course, we wanted to try and get to some more filmmakers, but that's hard to do. In terms of just to mention a couple for me that were standouts before we get into Lords of Chaos, which was the opening film, but. A couple of standout ones for me. There was a Danish film called Finale. I think it's pronounced Finale. Yeah, but it's spelled like Finale, and that was. I mean, that's a hard watch for anyone that is a bit squeamish and whatever. It's got, but it was really slickly put together. and you really sort of invested in the characters in the film, so it worked really well. Although, you know, it is very horrific, and again,
bloodthirsty.
Yes,
right,
it's got a bit of, dare I say it, sort of torture porn going on.
I was going to say, was it over the top gore, or was it that kind of realistic?
They
gore?
really went there,
Right.
and it is realistic,
Okay.
but it's effective. And for me, I thought that worked. And then there's another film which some argue wasn't really a horror film; it was more of a action thriller, but it definitely had horror elements, and it was called The Witch Part 1: The Subversion.
Oh, right, okay.
South Korean.
It
rolls off the tongue. South Korean film, kind of about the super soldier program. So it's the sort of thing that's been done before, where youths have been experimented on to make them, sort of better, faster, stronger, more intelligent.
Did they do that in
sort of
Logan?
thing. Yeah, they've done it in many things.
Soldier.
And yeah, exactly. All of those sort of things. Soldier, the Kurt Russell film, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it's been done in loads of stuff. So both TV, literature, and movies. But no, I really enjoyed this. I mean, this kind of pushed some boundaries in terms of action sequences, and I kind of liken it to those. For me in my life, those sort of tentpole films, like you had Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and then you had like The Matrix, and this is kind of sort of brand, in the way that it's actually does action, which involves hand-to-hand combat and gunplay and all of this sort of thing. But of course, what's really good about this is there's some really interesting drama in it as well. In fact, dramedy, really.
Right. Okay.
So that stood out, but that's just to name a couple. But there were.
And that was a foreign language movie? Did you say?
In fact, all the ones I've talked about there. The two I've just mentioned were both foreign language.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Cool. Yes.
Well, it's nice that they're opening the doors to and much,
Well, I mean, FrightFest always has.
It's been quite inclusive, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, with FrightFest, it's always been really global and very irrespective of budget.
Yes, that's true.
So you get everything from micro budget horror features right the way through to early studio releases, and sort of everything in between from wherever in the world. And I mean, that's one of the really cool things that FrightFest do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've not had the pleasure. So I've never had the pleasure of going, but it's one of those events where I kind of know that these are the films that I'm going to be hearing about. They always seem to have films that
there's some sort of buzz.
Suddenly get a buzz. Yeah. So I always look forward to what comes out of Glasgow.
We were there a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. It was 2 years ago, wasn't it? When we went? Was it 3 years ago when we went to Glasgow? I went.
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was. That was my first year.
Yeah. Because we went because we've been obviously making a documentary, cleaned up the town, remembering Ghostbusters is coming out later on this year. There you go. And so we were up there to try and promote and try and get some funding and etc. and etc. So I must admit, I found it a much more kind of intimate event because it's just based in one cinema anyway, which I know FrightFest is anyway. Well, actually, it does two now. FrightFest. I think it does the Prince Charles as well. But
apparently, what I get from the people who are really long-term FrightFesters, as I said, I've been going for about 6-7 years now, but I know people who have been doing it. It's been running for nearly 20 years.
Yeah. It is. I think it's the 20th.
I think it's anniversary next year.
Yeah.
And they said that the Glasgow one is very much like the original London ones were before they got big and before they got bigger sponsorship and more popular and multi-venue. Like you said, it's Prince Charles and it's a West End cinema as well. So it's got a lot bigger. But this had a real and credit to the guys. Alan and Paul and Greg and Ian. They all came and actually spoke to me individually at that, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, they work hard. They do.
And they do, and it was a really good atmosphere. This was probably one of the best I've been at.
Fantastic.
And I mean, anyone who wants to know more, frightfest.co.uk. We may as well give them a plug as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They run one in the summer at the August bank holiday weekend,
which is where
like
we're normally and we're
and that's like a 4-day event.
Yeah.
And then they run a 2-day event in sort of March time in Glasgow, which is the one we've just been to. And then they also every year run a Halloween event as well, which is a day's event, and you get to see like 7 films in a day, which is great.
Yeah, it's great. Absolutely.
Our average day, really.
Which would you prefer out of all the different?
Oh, it's weird. I mean, the London one is a big event.
Such a buzz to it.
Yeah. But I must admit, I kind of enjoy going up to Glasgow and.
But you just you're like I just see you running from one screening to another. When you're in London now, and even when you're in Glasgow, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to go and get a coffee, and I'll see you later. Okay, then, and off you go.
Well, unfortunately, that's about all you've got.
Yeah, that's right.
When you're watching 6 or 7 films a day, you've literally got about 20. Especially if they have a Q&A, you've literally got about 20 minutes between each film, so it's just enough time to maybe grab a sandwich and a coffee or something and then straight back in. But I love it. I mean, you'll see in the video how knackered we both looked, because we filmed it like literally the following day, and we were
I've seen the preview. Did you not have a shower?
It's a good job there's not smell-o-vision. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. No, I did shower. Thank you. But yes.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to question your cleanliness.
Your cleanliness. So while you were there, you've seen Lords of Chaos, and Ryan, you have also been to a screening of Lords of Chaos. Tell us a little bit more about
I've been talking
that.
Too much.
Well, I don't know. I love listening to your warm, silky voice.
Catch your breath. Okay.
Wow, where do we start with Lords of Chaos? So, I mean, Lords of Chaos is true-ish story of a band in Oslo, in Norway. A band called Mayhem.
That was almost Die Hard.
As in. This is for our American watchers or listeners. It's not everything isn't in London.
And no, we don't all live next door to the Queen.
So it's a Norwegian band called a black metal band called Mayhem. Norwegian black metal is a very hardcore metal.
A genre
that this band Mayhem kind of created.
Right. They're a real band, are they?
Yes.
They were.
And this is the kind of the true story of how that band formed in the late 80s and then through the 90s. And it's about the band and the sort of more extreme things they go to, and they also have it's almost like a sect or something. They have like the Black Circle, and it's just the band and their close friends. And
the Circle of Trust.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, and it's these group of people, and it's not just about the band; it's about the lifestyle of black metal as well.
Oh, okay.
And the guy they bring on as their singer, a guy who calls himself Death. Got their attention by sending in a demo with a dead rat, I think, as I recall correctly.
That's correct.
And he became their singer. And then at the beginning of the film, there is a particularly nasty scene involving him. And then basically it's about a guy that they come across called Varg, and he gets involved, and then things get more extreme, and there's things like church burning and
it's not a film for the churchgoers, is it?
It's not a film for the churchgoers.
It's going to alienate the church-going audience for sure.
Okay.
But yes, also faint-hearted. Yes.
Yeah, it's a very visceral, very visceral film. It's very visually unpleasant. I think it's actually worth noting that because it deals with. I don't think it's a spoiler. I mean, it does deal with suicide,
right.
And I think that it's actually probably worth
knife crime.
Yeah, really?
And some pretty graphic scenes. And I think it's worth noting that if you're going to watch the film, you need to be sort of mentally prepared for that. That there is going to be some very graphic and very disturbing scenes in the film.
Well, somebody at FrightFest just and this is a horror audience,
Yeah.
and I'm not,
so
I'm
you
not going to
almost
name
are
the
sort of
individual, so it's not, but somebody was
Turn
actually
the camera off,
sick.
you tell me who it was.
No, I don't know who it was, but some poor gentleman in the audience was actually sick during it.
Oh my
Jesus.
god!
Actually threw up, and we had to stop the film.
Oh,
Really?
He had to have
really?
medical attention. It's that disturbing, and I know because
goodness.
even I was like, oh, gold, and it's a really, and there are at least 3 really brutal scenes in it. I mean, brutal to the point you just think, oh, just stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh really?
You want it to stop.
Oh really?
Yeah, you absolutely want it to stop. And I think that, and also just to add to that, you always hear about these films. I think back in the day when people walked out of The Exorcist or fainted or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had a similar experience at the screening I was at, where someone had a very strong reaction. Again, no names.
We were at different screenings.
But there was someone in that screening who had a very strong reaction to it, to one particular scene, and he or she left the screen. I mean, I think the directors at Jonas.
Oh, you've asked.
I've got it somewhere. Jonas Ackerland. He's
Well
a music video director, but he also directed the Polar that's on Netflix, I think.
Oh right.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah, so he's sort of done that, and then mostly music videos. And it stars one of the Culkins, Rory Culkin.
Rory
really?
Culkin. Yes.
Oh, what in this one?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's for me, I thought he was exceptional.
Yeah. I mean, what's another?
Just bugging me now about Polar. Polar's that one with
Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh.
Okay.
I mean,
wasn't my favourite
I know that
film.
there's some
That was
negativity.
the one, wasn't it?
coming
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I've not seen that, but
so I am going to say that. I'm sorry. I know nobody sets out to make a bad film. Mads Mikkelsen was ace.
Oh yeah,
I love
he was amazing. Yeah. But I really sorry.
It's the franchise.
I wasn't really very keen on
it. We love Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah, we love Mads Mikkelsen's amazing.
But one of the things with this film that was quite interesting is, even though, as we both said, there's some really brutal horror, like realistic horror, which is brutal in it. But it's also a really odd film because it's quite amusing in places.
Oh, there's some
isn't it?
definite black humour
there's some
in there. Some
real
wonderful
black
moments.
comedy in this film, and also there's of course the drama stuff is quite strong in it as well, because it's it's kind of that difference between saying and doing, and popularity, about speaking something up in a big way, but actually whether you go through with something, and you the two main sort of characters in this are the yin and yang of that. Really, they're the extremes of those of those approaches. And again, that's not a spoiler, is it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I mean, I think the film. I mean, I've never been into that particular genre of music. I mean, I know people that are. I think the film kind of sums up the kind of, I guess, the way the mainstream would view that genre of music and everything that goes along with it, and that behaviour and the kind of self-harm, and there's a lot of that in the film. But I think that what comes out of it is very violent, but there is some very funny scenes in it. There's some very human scenes in it. And I think it's one of those films where I really feel like it deals with life and death and looks at those things in a very sort of almost humorous and tragic way. It's not trying to glamorize anything. It's not trying to glorify anything. It's saying that this is actually how people did live.
It's embracing the culture and the time and what they're into it. It's embracing those sort of three things.
It's I mean, because the thing that both of you have honed in on is the kind of the gore and just that, again, that visceral kind of reaction that people have had. But is there a story there?
Yes.
There is.
Yes, and it's a strong story.
Yeah.
And I think that's what knits it all together. I think the film comes in at just under 2 hours.
Right.
But it's
112 minutes.
112
there you go. Nice one,
and it's
Pete.
released by Arrow Film.
It is Arrow
fantastic.
Films.
It's actually an Arrow
I love
release.
Arrow Films. I'm not going to plug them too much because I think they're amazing.
Well, we plugged them last time.
We plugged them, Ring,
Ring,
wasn't it? Not the Ring,
for
but
Ringu.
Ring. Ringu, yeah.
Not Pingu.
They're doing Pingu.
Nice.
But they, and it's really quite a stunning film in a lot of ways. I saw it quite recently, so it's kind of still settling in my mind a little bit. But I think it should cut. It would be one of those films that they show on TV, and it's if you've been affected by any of the events in this film, it's that kind of.
Oh right,
thing.
okay.
It's very. It delves deep.
And I will say one last thing about Glasgow and FrightFest actually takes place during the Glasgow Film Festival.
Yes, that's right.
So, in fact, they were showing Ghostbusters this year.
Oh, that's right, they did, indeed.
But, so I obviously wasn't there for that long, so couldn't experience all those things. But, there are loads of screenings going on of both, again, from all over the world, different types of film, and even classic films. Like, 2 years ago when I went, I saw Dog Day Afternoon on the big screen, which I hadn't seen on the big screen before. It'd always been a home video film, growing up and whatever. So, it's a great opportunity if anyone's thinking of going to, I'm sounding like a representative for come visit Glasgow.com or something.
It's pretty gay.
But it would be a good, if you are really into films, which I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are.
Otherwise, you've completely steered in the wrong direction. Yeah.
But I'd love to go. I've never been, but I love the London event, so I'd love to go.
You'd be up for that next year.
Need to have a film screen there.
A Premier Scene podcast from there.
Need to have a film there.
Oh, anyway, well, yes, that's something an incentive. Just to round that off, Ryan.
Yes.
It is coming out, isn't it?
Yes, out March 29th from Arrow.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
In cinemas or just
cinemas? Yeah.
Cinemas, wow, fantastic. Well, moving on to something completely different and far more child-friendly. We were lucky enough to be invited to cover the Interfilm Awards, and that was that not Monday just gone?
It's a week on Monday.
Week on Monday. And it's a lovely event. It's been running for 5 years, and as it says, it gets kids into film. And what's
God, don't know they're born.
They don't know. I think that's what's amazing about it, because where we grew up in Devon, we certainly didn't have that kind of opportunity. So this is a national initiative. So kids all around the UK. Ireland, I think Northern Ireland as well, and Scotland, get the opportunity. Clubs run through the schools, or kind of extracurricular clubs as well, all have the opportunity to either go and make films, learn to write about films, or even just have the experience of a cinema experience of watching films, so world films, so that the teachers will come and show kids not just, it'll be like Cinema Paradiso and you know what I mean, and all these kind of wonderful films. So it's a really great initiative, and they do
the reports and stuff as
well.
It's not just like they try and cover all aspects of it. Like it's not just about going out and making films. It's also if you want to be more like what we do and be this side of the sort of like of the film industry. And I even went and did a talk there a few years back.
You did actually. That's how we got involved, wasn't it?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and I was just like, I don't do that much. And no, it'll be great. And this was down in Dorset. I went to this school and they showed me around their facilities. It's like, they paid a bloody fortune at my film school. I didn't have half the amount of stuff that these kids have. Little sod. And it does kind of put you in that little kind of that environment, like, you have to kind of up your game, because if this is what people are being taught now, they're being taught, and they were being taught everything, Photoshop the lot. And I was like, I just learned about films, but as film,
media. We saw better films growing up. And,
we did,
and also they will be in so much debt by the time they're
exactly it. It's like we're in debt for making films. Thanks very much. But
you're not wrong.
It's like don't
wearing
touch
that t-shirt. No, they don't.
But it was
You're
great.
Living on baked beans.
Yeah, beans on toast. Oh, mother's milk. But it was really interesting.
I've met your mother. She looks nothing like a baby.
no kind of bean at all. Beano. Bueno. That's what I used to get called when I was younger. Beano. But anyway, that's
you sure it wasn't Mr. Bean?
Bueno. I did get called that.
Did you?
It was like, and they was like, oh, like Mr. Bean, and then he was like Beano, and I was like, oh god. Anyway. That's a whole separate trauma that I don't really want to live.
Anyway.
So yeah, into
they were great. Well, there was called Film Club back then.
They were called Film Club back then. Yeah.
That was it. But it was fascinating, just to kind of sit, and unusual for me to be on the other side of stuff, to be kind of like sat in front of 80 students and ramble on about things and not swear, which I don't swear that much, but when I try and get a laugh, I tend to sneak a few words in there. It's like, no, they're all kids. Yeah. But it was great. It's been great since. So we had involvement with them at one point or another.
We used to teach the kids how to do. They don't do the red carpet anymore, but we used to teach the kids how to do be red carpet reporters. Nice. So we've been connected to it for quite a number of years, haven't we? Really, and there's something great about being around kids. They're full of enthusiasm, and they're brave as well. And interestingly enough, I think some of the themes of the films that were winning awards were really kind of like mature themes. I don't mean kind of adult themes, but
like mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was, and Ryan, we chucked you in at the deep end, didn't we? And we got you on the camera, recording the interviews. How did you find that?
I loved holding the camera. Nothing quite like holding a camera. I felt like I had a bit of.
This guy's doing a good job.
Yeah, exactly.
He's very still.
Hasn't
shake once.
I know.
Yeah.
Amazing.
No, I should learn from him. Or her.
Yeah.
This person. Gender equality here. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was fun. I had a slight bit of imposter syndrome, but it was it was good.
No, it was good. Should we have some interviews?
I was going to say, who were the patrons then of this?
Well, Barbara Broccoli is a major patron. So there were people like Eddie Redmayne there, Luke Evans. We were lucky enough to speak to Andy Serkis, Jason Isaacs as well, and Malachi Kirby. Daniel Radcliffe was there the other year as well. So there's a lots of and Naomi Harris as well. She's a real advocate for the charity. As well. So
wonderful.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to speak to. Should we hear what Andy Serkis has to say? Far more eloquently.
Andy Serkis has always got good stuff.
Yeah, he has. We love him.
It was good to see him without dots on his face.
Without dots. I thought there were spots.
He's like, oh, that's what he looks like.
What was so special about the Interfilm Awards?
Just the level of filmmaking, the absolutely brilliant ideas, the thought-provoking, relevant, topical subject matter of the films. And I thought Interfilms, as I say, this is my first award, so I thought it was going to be much more naive and younger and innocent in a way, but actually the subject matters that they chose were really important and current.
I mean, he's touched upon what you said there, Ryan, that these themes as well and these films, you would hope that, their contemporaries will see these films and it brings that sort of inclusivity, really, isn't it? But the age ranges from, I can't remember what they are.
Well, I can't remember what the categories are.
I can't remember what the categories are. Young people between 5 and 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is good that. It is good to hear things like this, though, that they're being inclusive, because one of the things about the industry, which has frustrated us, or I know we've talked about this for many years, is the fact that it can be quite elitist and nepotistic and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah,
in terms
absolutely.
Of, so the fact that these guys are doing this
there's an avenue for kids to explore and experiment and create as well, isn't it? Really. Yeah. I don't know what we've got some more interviews.
But they've just disappeared.
Oh, they've just disappeared. You carry on doing the technical
Talk
stuff.
amongst yourselves.
Well, so there was different. So basically, there's live action, documentary, animation categories. There's review writing as well. So depending on what your what you're interested in, there is something for you to be able to tap into.
Well, you do a bit of review writing yourself.
I do a bit of review writing.
Maybe we should plug that
yes,
as well.
I will actually. So there's the one for thank you, Netpix. I'm like, I should have you as my agent. You're welcome again, Keith. So yes, I have a review website, Netpix Online, which reviews all kind of online streaming content. And also our premierscene.net channel as well. We've got reviews on there. Ryan, would you like to plug your review channel as well? I think that's fair.
Yes.
Ticket, tell me.
I also
Just
write
a ticket?
for
No
ticket reviews.com. Again, it's about films that stream online.
Yeah.
So you can see them, watch the review and or read the review and go and see it straight away.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, you're still...
it's just the internet.
It's just bombed out. That's just what you want.
Do?
I'd like to say as well, it was hosted at the Odeon Lux, and I don't know whether you guys have had an opportunity.
I've not been yet.
That was the first time I've been.
No.
It's beautiful. I have to say.
It is stunning.
Yeah, it is really stunning. It's kind of Art Deco, so it's playing to that kind of golden age of cinema, which I totally love. And our premiere scene is very much based on that kind of look and feel.
With the red carpet.
But also it's very contemporary as well in there, isn't it? And it really had needed a makeover, hadn't it, for years? And,
I think
so. In fact, we saw the last film shown.
We did,
which was The Post.
We did The Post,
and it was
and Tom Hanks
and Steven Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg,
him and Tom Hanks did the intro, didn't
they?
They
did, they did.
And that was literally the last film that main screen, the famous screen there. Yeah. It was the last film. But even though there's something classic about that on screen, it was annoying because there wasn't enough of a rake on it, and people's heads would get in the way, and you got a lot of echo and reverb, because of the old stuff. So it needs a. It needed
and we were lucky enough to go into the auditorium, didn't we, and see. Oh my goodness, it really is.
When is that screen?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
It was all right.
And it was how many?
Yeah, but they've made the bold move of actually taking out loads of seats to make the seats that are there a lot more roomy for you. So it's quite a bold, risky move, that. But
you got
prices are a bold, risky move for it.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
But it looks.
But it's lovely.
Yeah, it really is nice. I mean, when you compare with what they've done with The Empire, which I know we've had this discussion many times altogether. Not on the podcast.
Separate podcasts.
This is a chance to make it a bit more. But like The Empire, which was my favourite cinema, is now this cine world, and it's just black, and it's just awful what they've done.
It's soulless,
no character,
isn't it?
and they've just ripped out everything that was interesting about that cinema.
Yeah, well, there was a sense of history and occasion in The Empire, wasn't there?
Yeah, whereas with the review had a revamp, and that looks a lot much nicer in there. It's just like cleaner, but what Odeon have done have just made it.
They've raised the bar.
They've just come in.
It's a funny. This is a whole. We could have a whole podcast on this, but I mean, this is the interesting thing with movie exhibition now is we've got obviously it's quite controversial in the news at the moment, but we've got there's so much home cinema available now, and so much streaming and online that I'm kind of old school in so much as I still like the cinema experience, and
that shared experience as well, isn't it, with others in the audience and things.
As long as those others in the audience are actually being respectful, which is
But this is it. It's like I know we've said before about it, but it is it is that community experience. And when I went, how many years ago? It was 25th anniversary of Back to the Future. So so this was a few years back now, but they were doing a press screening in Fiennes, but you just go there, and I just nipped out to the loo and came back, so I thought I'm not going to miss anything that I haven't seen already. And when you see just like all those heads, you're just like, I'm going to miss, but you see like all those heads kind of illuminated by this spectacle on the screen, and which looks, used to seeing a film so many times on the small screen. To see it on the big screen is always a massive trick because there's so much more you see.
Yeah, so much more detail.
It's such a
there?
richer texture.
Yeah.
But just seeing everybody there, just engrossed in this film, and it's like that is exactly what you don't get on home cinema. It doesn't matter what you do technically, and you know, you might go to a 4K screen, or get a 4K TV. So there is, like, in terms of technically what you're seeing is almost identical, but you lose so much, just that whole experience about going out there and stuff, which in some respects, I know we spoke about horror, that horror is slightly different, whereas most people's horror experiences are at home.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Well,
video, nasties,
when we were kids. But
couldn't get into the cinema, so...
Yeah.
One of the things, again, sort of back to FrightFest, but one of the things that's so good about that is you do get the, you know, community feeling, but the thing is, FrightFest goers and fans are really respectful in so much as you don't get glaring screens and phones on and calls during the film.
Or Ian would kill everyone.
Well, he would, absolutely. Yeah. He does videos about it, you know, turn your bloody phone off. You know,
who does that?
Ian at FrightFest.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, you get that, but at the same time, the audience has fun.
Yeah.
So there are moments when something will happen where everyone will cheer or applaud
that's true,
or whatever.
Actually,
and I don't mind interruption from the film in that respect.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate people talking in films. I get really annoyed about that. And
when they're sat next to you, not actually talking on the side.
Yeah. I only like silent movies. That's it. I don't like movies with dialogue. No, but yeah, no, exactly. But I mean, audience members talking during films.
No, I'm the same.
And but you know, in that FrightFest type environment, you kind of like it when the audience is enjoying it around you, and you feel that, and even
feel that excitement and that enthusiasm, and
even the other reaction, the Lords of Chaos. You know, that had I'm sure nobody wanted to get vomited on, but but
to be fair, the feeling in
the
feeling of the screening I was in of that, just to
look, it wasn't a rocky horror.
You know, you could sense the tension in the room, not just because of the reaction of people in our separate screenings, but you could feel the sense of tension. Yeah, and that was something that I haven't experienced for a while in a film.
Sorry, folks.
It's
a conversational podcast.
It is, we're going to
go on all sorts of mini tangents.
Exactly, I'm talking minis.
You do press record, right?
The wee ones.
What did we want? Malachi.
Malachi.
Malachi Kirby's one of the presenters. But this was for the Best Animation Award.
Congratulations, because you've won the Best Animation, haven't you? Can you tell us what inspired your story, please?
What inspired it was at the time loads and loads of people were using the food bank, but I used the food bank once and I got bullied a little bit, but it inspired us to calm down the bullying.
And did that inspire you as well to put that as part of your story?
Yes.
And what made you use animation as part of the reason why you wanted to make the film?
We used animation because it's a fun way to get it to make the film, to actually make it work.
And because film is such a collaborative effort, everybody working together, do you think you learn more about working in a team?
Yeah, it helped to make the film. It helped to make us work as a team. We made more friends and stuff, and we were introduced to methods that help us get things done quicker as a team.
And Malachi, what was it like watching the film? I mean, the quality of the work is phenomenal, isn't it, for people so young?
Yeah, definitely. I just had no idea that kids was making work like this. You know, it's incredible and very inspiring.
Films and companies like Interfilm that are promoting education, not just making films, but also educating about film. I think that's really important as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, as I was saying, kids have a voice and they're paying attention to what's happening, whether we're aware of that or not. They're tuned in, and so I think we need to start listening more.
Yeah, exactly. And do you think, were you a part of a youth group or anything like this when you were?
No, but I wish I was. Like I had no idea about anything like this happening when I was a child.
And what's so special about animation?
Animation, I think what's special about it is you get the chance to express yourself in a way that's not limited to, just what you can see or what you look like or what you sound like, You get to get really creative. So, yeah, I'm glad that you guys chose this one.
Yeah, so it makes you think it's food banks. I know.
Wow.
Yeah. This is what I mean. This is the incredible kind of themes that the kids sort of picked up on. I mean, I wouldn't even think about making a film like that. So it's great how they're encouraged to expand their imaginations and they're educating, aren't they? Really.
I was actually thinking on the other side of it. This is probably another podcast as well. But you kind of think I don't just playing devil's advocate. I don't want to think of kids as growing up and making serious films from such a young age. It's great that they're aware of these things.
Yes,
but
true.
If I was that age, I'd want to make a film about ghosts or
monsters
or whatever I found fun. So I'm hoping they do find some fun along the way.
That's a
when
good
they're
point.
Writing stuff.
Yeah.
And I hope that we haven't ruined a whole generation of kids by basically making the decision that some people have made.
Oh yes,
yeah, exactly.
That's true. Well, that was the Interfilm Awards, and so the last film we're discussing today is The White Crow, directed by the amazing Ralph Fiennes. I'm unashamedly a really big fan of his as an actor and a filmmaker. He has made this film about the ballet dancer Rudolf Nureyev, and it's the story that takes us to the point in his life where he defects to the West from Russia, and the story is told in a non-linear fashion, and there's kind of 3 chapters that we touch upon: his impoverished childhood, then the areas, the period of his life where he's in Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg, where he's studying to be a ballet dancer, and then in the kind of the third part is where him and his fellow performers go to perform in Paris, and they're there for about 5 weeks, and while he's there, he is completely consumed by the art, the culture, and it's really beautiful how they've shot it, and how all art of whatever form it is, he then takes away for him to then inform him as a dancer, and he gets to meet friends while he's over there, some Parisian friends, and while he's out and about, he's also being closely followed by the KGB. And then they're reporting back to Russia that he's turning up for his performances. He's not doing anything wrong other than just wanting to go, and he's a young man, he wants to live life. And then it kind of gets to the point where they're all going to move on to London, and he's told he's going to have to return back to Moscow, and then he knows once he goes there he'll never come back out, and so he declares diplomatic immunity in the airport, and it causes quite a kerfuffle. I'm not giving anything away there.
It's not spoiling.
It's not really, because people know of Rudolf Nureyev is that he defected to the West, and then became this pioneering dancer and choreographer. But the way that David Hare has written the screenplay, and Ralph Fiennes has I would say choreographed this film as well, it's just utterly beautiful. And Oleg Ivenko is the lead who plays Nureyev, and he is a dancer, a ballet dancer, and turns actor. So it's a beautiful film. I loved Ralph Fiennes with what he did with Coriolanus. I mean, that was the first time I ever walked out of a cinema and my arms, I had hair stood up on end, and I was just completely shaken by what I'd seen. It had such a kind of such a physical effect on me, and so and then The Invisible Woman he went on to direct as well, about Charles Dickens, and so now he's doing this other story, which I think is I think he said that he found it difficult to fund because he didn't want to use famous faces. He's using Russians because it is, that authentically in the Russian language rather than, using Western actors with, that adopt a Russian accent. It's all very much about authenticity. Ray Fiennes appears in it.
I was going to say, is he in the film?
He does. Yeah, he plays Pushkin, which is Nuryev's teacher in Leningrad, which is one of the stories one of the questions I actually put to Rafe. I don't know if you want to pull up the interview, and then we can probably discuss it a little bit further. But no, I don't. I'd like to think I wasn't giving a spoiler away. I suppose if you didn't know the story,
Titanic. The ship sinks.
Yeah. But I just adore his work. To be honest with you, he's just a master craftsman as far as I'm concerned.
Watching the film, and it felt like almost like life imitating art. Pushkin teaches Nureyev. Yourself, as the director, is teaching Oleg the craft of screen acting. Did that create a lovely symbiotic relationship
with Oleg?
Yes.
Of course. I'm effectively teaching or guiding Oleg as a young actor who was never a young screen actor. And in the film, I'm his teacher, also guiding him, and also he's guiding me. I mean, I'm attempting to speak Russian. I think I put it off, but I definitely had to ask him, is that okay? Did I sound? He gave me little tiny language hints. And that was
very grounding for you as well.
The film is the result of extraordinary collaboration. It really exists because I was blessed with an amazing cast and crew, and who gave of themselves and their time and their artistry. And I mean, it was a tough film to finance. We didn't have a lot of time, and people gave of their energy and their commitment. So I feel blessed.
And the story's told wonderfully in a non-linear order. What made that exciting for you as a filmmaker, and also sort of visually as well?
Well, David Hare, who written it, and I both felt we resisted a linear approach. We felt there were exciting possibilities of portraiture, of looking at a human being by juxtaposing their childhood and their student years and their present moment. So Paris moments go against childhood moments, go against a few years back in Leningrad, and I believe it gives us a quite interesting portrait. We're reminded of, like, I see a picture of yourself as a child now. I make a connection, and I think about your life, and now that little girl became you now, and that's an interesting way to contemplate someone.
And the beauty of with film, obviously you can take multiple takes to get the best performances. When you're shooting the dancing scenes, did you have to be more mindful because of the intensity of the performances and the physical requirements?
Yes, in fact, I had met briefly Carlos Acosta, who I don't know, but I went to see him do a show, and I was introduced to him afterwards, and he said, "Can I give you a word of advice, Rafe? I dance and jump for a living, but I can't do it repeatedly for a camera." Because he had been asked to appear in a film, and he said I had to dance and jump again and again and again. So I was mindful of Oleg's stamina, and quickly it's you realise that the challenge that you don't have the luxury with a dancer that they can repeat and repeat and repeat these complex and difficult moves.
Very good.
I just think he's amazing. I
think he's become a very interesting filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, his journey there is quite interesting. That obviously, he had quite a career as an actor. Prior to that, and you think of some of the directors that he's worked with over the years. So he really had the opportunity to kind of learn from the best as he was going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've not seen this one yet, but I've seen the previous two films, and I think he's very good. It'll be interesting to see this one with him from an acting perspective, in a bit more of a supporting role, a bit more of a backseat.
Yes,
because obviously he was also playing the leads in
both
of the other films as well. It'll be interesting to see how that affects the film. But obviously I find the whole actor-director thing very interesting. And
I wonder whether you get to a point in your career that you want to be able to be in control of the story from beginning to end. you know, as an actor, you're turning up and you're obviously more than delivering your lines, but you're performing, but you're not in control of what the end product is. Whereas I think it was George Clooney that says it's much more fun to be the painter than the paint. So, you know, as the painter, you've been doing some amazing artwork at the moment. Right, he has, Ryan, hasn't he?
We'll add those in somehow.
Yeah, we'll get those in. But
in the backdrop next to
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
put the price on.
£10.
And I think you
yes, materials. No, it really doesn't.
And I think we're seeing more and more, aren't we, that directors, actors are turning to direct, and Bradley Cooper's another one, because they want to kind of see the story from beginning to end.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, this has always happened. You know, from Olivier to Orson Welles to whatever. But you're right. It's not. But at the same time, more and more seem to be doing this now. Angelina Jolie's done that. So we're not just talking about men.
Yes, that's right. Well done, Keith.
That's longevity, though, doesn't it? As well, to a career.
Yeah, I think so.
Because at the end of the day, you do go in and out of fashion, so that's it's just self-preservation.
My plan was always to have the acting career when I was young, and then move into directing, like a lot of these people have done. Unfortunately, I'm behind schedule on this.
Well, that's all right. You name me a film that doesn't go beyond schedule.
But 20 years.
But I mean, it was a good night last night, wasn't it?
It
was a cold red carpet, but everybody was.
It was really cold, which because we've had bizarrely mild weather, which is a concern in itself, but nothing to do with film, thankfully. But it just flowed. We just got there. They turned up early. I think we've done and dusted in an hour.
We were. The talent turned up on time early. It was amazing.
That was,
actually.
Organic publicity.
It was.
So a shout out to them.
We love organic. So that was The White Crow. That's being released Friday the 22nd of March by Studio Canal. Okay. I love Studio Canal films as well.
Yeah. I'm seeing it tomorrow.
Are you? The White Crow?
With the Q&A.
Are you? Oh, I am so jealous.
Yeah. No, but you saw it, right?
I have seen it. Yeah.
I'll be watching your film.
I actually, in fact, I've seen it twice.
Wow.
I did. I saw it. Well, it was at the LFF. See, so I was fortunate enough to interview him twice about it. So it was nice. The first time I could ask him a bit more about Nureyev, and this time round I could ask him kind of a bit more about the filmmaking and stuff. But he's always very kind of.
He's always
he spent a fair time talking to you just then.
Yeah, he did. No, he was very generous with his time. Yeah. Should we sign off with network links and whatever it is that we want to promote social networking wise? Keith.
Go ahead.
You want me to start?
You can start.
About this podcast? Or
whatever podcast, whatever film you're making, whatever web series you want to flog to death.
Blimey, there's so much.
The list goes on.
If you're remotely interested in seeing anything that I've made, you can see some short films if you go to YouTube and put in British Eyles, that's EYLES, as in my last name. You like what I did there? And as I said, there's some short films there. I am also involved in another podcast called Movie Heaven, Movie Hell, which I co-host with Simon Aitken. And the premise of that podcast is essentially we're going through the A to Z of filmmakers, and we are picking movies of theirs that we love and movies that we don't, and discussing that. And also we do lots of sort of geeky genre type movie spin-off episodes and whatever, including the X-Men franchise, Star Trek, Star Wars, etc., Batman, you name it.
Your web series?
Oh yeah, I'm currently a friend of mine called Ian David Diaz has a web series on Amazon called Rebecca Gold, and I have a part in that. I guess.
Yes, you hold a gun.
Yeah, indeed.
You have a weapon.
And that's enough from me. I think
kind of covers it. Ryan, Anthony, either of you two lovely gentlemen want to go next?
Go for it.
No, I have nothing to declare but my genius. So.
What about that interview you did? If people want to see more
Oh yes,
of that
the whole.
That was good.
Yeah, if you want to see more of the Lee Cronin interview on The Hole in the Ground, then go to premierscene.net.
Thank you.
Yeah, me nothing. Absolutely nothing.
You've got.
I'm in final stages of our documentary on Ghostbusters.
I was going to say thank you if you didn't.
Yeah, you've got to mention that.
I'm off next week to do the grade and the sound mix, which will complete everything that needs to be done on it. So it's quite a moment after 11 years that we are now at this stage.
And where can people find more about this?
We've got the website, which is buenoproductions.com, and obviously on Facebook, because that's where everybody lives, really. To be honest. So under Ghostbusters doc, do look for Ghostbusters doc, and it's all there. We haven't done any update, I've posted out an update, and it's on Kickstarter as well. We've got links there, and we haven't done an update this year yet because we've just been finishing.
Yeah, we have.
We're just kind of there's a lot of intricate stuff that we're finishing off, and until that's kind of all done, then we can do an announcement about it being finished and all that kind of stuff. But until and the screenings and things like that, and we're all close now to getting all that. But it's just finicky things that just got to be kind of like little things that got to be tied up, and then it's complete. So, but next week starts that final stage.
Final polish,
which is quite exciting.
It's
very exciting.
It's grading suites, on a big thing. Yes, it's cool. It's really exciting now. So
it's all good.
That's it.
It's all good. And me, find what we're doing at premierscene.net, Twitter at PremScene, Facebook at PremierScene. And we've got lots of more exciting interviews coming up over the next couple of weeks. So we're hoping to be at the Dumbo premiere. That'll be a Tim Burton film. So that's what we're looking forward to coming up. And otherwise, we're hoping to see you all in the next sort of couple of weeks, really, isn't it? Really, for the next podcast. So thanks for joining us.
Yes,
and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Give us a like, subscribe, and spread the word, please.
Yeah. Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.